Good morning. I hope everybody can hear me. I'll put the mic a bit up. Well, as a sponsor, I have the honor to take 5 minutes of your time. So I would say welcome to the Lubricant Expo, day one. My name is Roland. I'm a commercial manager for a tank terminal. And maybe a bit unconventional to be standing here between a lot of producers, traders, distributors, and maybe even end customers. However, I am, together with the company, part of an entire supply chain. So I prepared a small speech. I'm going to read it up a bit. And I'll start with maybe a little fact. So did you know that lubricants are responsible for reducing friction in over 90% of the moving machinery worldwide? It's a rhetorical question because we're all in the business and we know this. But without the lubricants, basically the world will come to a standstill. And that kind of stipulates the importance of this conference. I also want to express that this is not just an exhibition. It's a unique opportunity for all of us, whether we're in production, distribution, trading, operating tank terminals, or serving the end customer, to come together. Each of us plays a vital role in the complex value chain. And today is about recognizing that we're all working towards the same goal. We all want to deliver quality, reliability, innovation to our industry. In these uncertain times, it's challenging times as we all know, everybody watches the news. Also the economy sometimes is rumbling a bit. We see a lot of market dynamics, supply chain challenges, technological shifts, for example, and our ability to connect has never been so important as today. And I'm not just talking about business connections, I mean real personal connections between all of us. Because behind every product, every shipment, every service, every transaction, there are people. People who share the same passion for excellence and the same commitment to progress. That's all of us. And then, of course, one little line or alinea about sustainability. Sustainability is one thing that is no longer an option. It is essential nowadays. So from reducing emissions in production to optimizing logistics and creating more efficient products, every link in our chain has a role to play. Together, we can make a real difference. Not just for our business, but for the planet and for future generations. So, as you walk the floor later on today, attend sessions, meet new partners, I encourage you to take the time to truly connect. Ask questions, share insights, and explore opportunities together. Because the future of our industry and the sustainability of our world depends on the strength of connecting and the connections we make today in person. So this is my 5 minutes of conference, at least here on the stage. Thank you, and let's make this an inspiring and productive event for everyone.
Middle or?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter?
No, it doesn't matter what order we're in.
Okay, we can go boy, go boy.
It'll be awesome.
Thank you so much.
All right. G'day everyone and welcome to Lubricant Expo Europe for 2025. We're changing up the format a little bit this year where this time round, rather than doing some prepared discussions on some topics, we're going to try and get as much audience feedback as possible. So with that in mind, as per usual, right, please submit as many questions as possible through Slido. If you're, I don't know, you've been living under a rock since COVID or something like that. Slido is the platform. You can go to slido.com or you can use the QR code just up the top. And that's a forum for asking questions. And we'll take some of those questions. You can upvote and we'll try to make sure that we get through as many of those questions as possible because we have a very esteemed panel here with us today. Before I introduce them, probably just worth a couple of housekeeping type issues. Obviously, use Slido as much as possible. Please keep those questions coming. You can basically submit them from now onwards, and I'll start to see them come up. The next thing would obviously be phones. please put them on silent. Don't be that person, right? And usually I would say, don't worry about taking photos of the presentations because they're all going to be provided, but there's no presentations here. So we're going to keep it nice and casual. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to try and, make sure that we've got as much time with our panel as possible because they've generously given up their time. So I'll just do some introductions. I guess I might as well go across the room, hey? So Brian Paliotti, who's the president at Afton Chemicals. So we've got a representative from the additive supply chain side of things. Jana Wilkinson, who's the global lead and vice president of Klein's energy practice. We've got Petra Matzat, who's the managing director of lubricants for Shell in Deutschland, Germany. I hear that's what you're supposed to call it. And Patrick Bell, who's the managing director of industrial sales for Castrol. Now, I think that what that really gives us is a really broad overview of the market, which is fantastic. We've got representatives here who, pretty much everyone from the very top of the, let's say upstream part of the supply chain right through to customers and end users. I myself am kind of a consultant to end users, so I'm about as low on the totem pole as it gets in this room. And so I think what's going to be really valuable is kind of the different perspectives that that everyone can bring. Now, obviously, this is Lubricant Expo Europe. So we're going to have a bit of a European bias and a European focus as we go through these discussions. And with that in mind, I'll get it kicked off. Maybe a question for Petra. If you wouldn't mind, so what's the future of lubricants in Europe? And maybe let's oppose that to the other sort of like the big markets of America and Asia. What are the drivers that makes Europe kind of unique and different?
Yeah, thank you, Rev, for the question. And first of all, very welcome from my side as well. Good morning. I hope everybody had a good coffee and is well awake. Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? And a bit of a crystal ball. Where is the future? I think the key point, which is undoubtedly the same in all regions, is that it's a time of change, right? A lot of things changing at different pace, in different sectors, in different regions, etc. I think for Europe, we are definitely kind of ahead in terms of the sustainability thinking. But on the other side, what we see bases the whole industrial situation and economic situation in Germany, Germany as well, but whole Europe, that it's quite a stagnating market right now, whilst we see other regions being still on a growth path. So I think the sustainable piece, we are leading technology in some areas for sure as well, just based the history and everything. But there are other things like really the very new stuff, like if we talk about e-mobility, EVs, etc., right, where we are definitely behind, where I would say Asia a lot going further with the e-fluids, etc. However, as I said, there are, I think in all different regions, you have these specific sectors where they are very strong, where we are growing. But as I said, we do see more stagnation in Europe right now rather in the other areas.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Brian, you've got a kind of a global view.
Sure.
How do you see the differences?
I would, good morning, by the way. I would echo what Petra said. I think that the European market has been in that realm for the last few years. I really, from my perspective, don't see it changing that much going forward. I think it's more important what we're going to see in the future. I think that you're right. There are some areas inside of the market that are more from a technological perspective ahead of the game. I think there's also some that are lagging. I think the e-mobility has changed a lot in the last 5 years. I think if we were sitting here 5 years ago, there probably would have been a wide disparity of opinion on what was going to happen. But I also think that when you take a look at the markets around the world, it's real easy to say some are growing a lot faster than others. I think it's easy everyone is jumping to, India's the growth and China 5 years ago, and there's a mix of that. I think that's the easy thing to do. I really think that south of the equator is growing a lot faster than north of the equator versus we always think east to west. And so I think as we see the market going forward, I think that's probably where you're going to see more of the growth. But specific to Europe, I think we've been at this place for a little while, and I think it's going to continue.
As someone who's from south of the equator, that's really nice to hear. Okay, so being that I'm on the end user side, we also see differences in the way that kind of the value chain is set up as well, right? So whether lubricants are being sold direct, through distributor, through reseller, and all that sort of stuff. Maybe Jana, you could kind of speak to some of the regional differences. You probably see that a lot at Klein. Do you see any kind of emerging trends? Like, from my perspective, I see basically everything going to a distributor-served model, but you might see it differently.
And this is a fascinating start of the discussion, because at the end of the day, when we start talking about something like distribution, we need to link it what you were talking about. It's all the question about the growth and how you capture value. So I would always frame the question about route to market and the business model in the context how we're trying to capture value. So if you look at what we see currently, the models we see currently, three things shape them. So the first thing is the geography that you serve. For instance, if you serve large countries like India, China, you have to have a different distribution model for tier 1 cities, tier 2, tier 3. So the country that you serve, and Europe also has quite an interesting configuration. For instance, in the consumer automotive, we have quite powerful intermediaries such as auto parts stores. So partially the nature of the market shapes the business model and route to market that is viable. The second point is the sectors. So for instance, to your point about whether some sectors are more kind of afforded more of an indirect model, for sure. If you look at the industrial, which is service intensive, you have to have a large degree of the direct presence, because this is how you deliver value. So I think it's we need to be very careful by saying that one or the other model prevails. It just depends. And it depends also where you expect your growth come from. So for instance, if you're an automotive company where majority of business is currently coming from the automotive side and you try to grow in the industrial, you need to be aware the certain service requirement may necessitate not only to look at your current partners, but also to ask whether they are fit for purpose when it comes to additional growth, right? So, and once you, let's say, even if you do choose to go down the indirect route, it's not just about finding the partners, it's also equipping them with the right capabilities, with the right service level, let's say, understanding and the performance management system so that they can deliver this value on your behalf. Because at the end of the day, if you choose to go down the path of the indirect representation, these are the people who represent your brand. A lot of them are multi-brand distributors. So the question is, how do you reconcile your desire to go to market in the most cost-efficient way, but also making sure that the brand value that you're communicating is delivered effectively through your distribution network? So I would say, historically, there has been a shift towards indirect, but in the future, it depends. You have to find the right partners, manage the right partners, and choose the model that is most suitable to your outlook and where you want to grow.
Maybe, Patrick, do you want to expand on that? Because you're obviously, sales professional, sales focused. Yeah. And I think one of the challenges that, you can expand on that as well, but one of the challenges that I see in some of the business models is basically finding competent people too, right?
Yes, maybe just want to add something to Jana, which I fully agree. So it depends. I think finally it's a mix of management decision or a customer demand, because some want speediness, stock availability, especially in let's say smaller markets, and in other areas or other customers expect really a high standard of quality, reliability, backup, and so on. So I think you must decide as a company in which country you want to play direct or indirect, and in many cases, it's a mix of both. So, but fully agree, we have the same issue or the same chances, and therefore fully agree. Yeah, the other topic, as you said, is the talent pipeline. I think first of all, it's getting more and more global markets, so it's not that the local sales guy or technical guy is the thing you have for now. You need also people who are flexible, open to travel, ready to step into things which are difficult in a changing environment. And yeah, I think at the end it's still something how you act like a leader. As company, you can give a kind of a behavior guideline, but at the end, the leader is someone who is bringing enthusiasm into the team, inspiring to be in this part of the business. And still, lubricants is like a family. So I think it's difficult to bring other people into a family. So you need somehow have connectors, you need to have trade fairs like this or conferences, and you must talk openly in the friendship. And often it's like this. Oh, it's interesting. What's about lubricants? And I want to join. What's possible? And there are many things possible, and a great mix of local business and global business.
Maybe just a question for Petra, because actually on this stage last year, when we talked about people, you talked specifically about the challenges of bringing more women into
There you go.
into
We
the
managed to
fold,
bring one more on stage already.
which is great. How do you see that sort of landscape changing? Is it still as challenging?
I would say 1 year is probably too short to see
true.
differences. And I assume all of you will agree it's still a challenge in general to get the right people with the right capabilities and skill sets, and then on top even trying to bring in more female talent. However, I have to say recently, at least in my team, we were really able to bring in some new young female talents who really love to be in that environment. But that's a bit the case, right? We also had cases where we had some dual students being with us for a certain time, really interested. But then when realizing how the business is and how it is if you go out and discuss with FWS, IWS, etc., that's still a very man's world. So you have to feel comfortable with it, right? And some do and others don't. And that's okay. But anyhow, to really make it attractive, show how nice it is also as a woman in that environment, I think you can get advantages out of it as well, right? Because all the nice gentlemen trying to make your life easy sometimes. But you have to be the right person for it, right? And then on top, of course, bring the right skill set. But I think there, as you rightly said, now opening things a bit up, and you don't need to be, for example, for sales, the perfect technical engineer, etc. Of course, it helps if you have a bit of understanding. However, we do have a great technical team who supports, right? So it's probably not that you need that one person that brings the perfect skill set. You just have to find different setups, how it works. And going back to changing the model, how you serve the market, if you then think about the indirect channels, distributors, etc., where actually the team who does take care to manage the distributors, that's a completely different kind of skill set, right? That's not the typical sales where you are with the IWS people, etc., right? Or also discussing with the technical guys on the industrial side. This is a completely different thing. That's more of a people business, where we do see also that a lot of female talents tend more towards that area, because that's probably a bit more of our nature. Now, I'm not going into stereotypes, but anyway, that is right.
Yeah, I would. If one thing I would like to add to that as well, I think we do need to speak to whys. You're absolutely like Petra, and that it has to be gender neutral. We have to focus on things. Look, all we know here is that the future of this industry is going to be different from the past. So there have to be people who come in potentially from the very different perspective. So the ability to look at traditional topics from a different perspective, be that gender diversity or interdisciplinary diversity, this is absolutely key. Because otherwise, we just basically look at solving yesterday's problem with the yesterday's set of solutions. And this is where, if you take, for instance, Asia, right, and we bring it in the context of European, because we have very rich history, we have a lot of things we're proud of, but this is also could be our limitation, because we have a very long context of how we solve problem. If you look at, for instance, how mobility is evolving in Southeast Asia, they're not any longer thinking about, well, this is EV versus ICE. They think, what kind of EV? How do I power my EV? How do I sell my EV? So they are coming out with the new ways, not only of thinking about the solution, but also about the problem. So this diversity of ways of looking at the problems, that is the why that we have to position to other people who are trying to attract in the industry. There's so many interesting dilemmas to be solved. And especially from Europe, coming from the end user standpoint, we serve about 15 to 17 fundamentally different industrial sectors. You want to be an expert in mining, you can be. You want to be an expert in construction, you can be. And you can be in the lubricant industry. It's hard to think about any other industry which allows to apply yourself in such a broad range of contexts, commercial, research, and everything else. So I think this is the thing that will attract people who are not otherwise kind of typical candidates for this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I really try to keep things super simple. I think that the key to all of this is, from a talent perspective, is, you know, the line we use at Afton is we only bring people in and pay people for one thing. We pay them to think. We don't pay them to do anything. So, you know, as far as the expertise you come in with, we're only paying you to think about how the problem and what the solution is. So, you know, when we talk about talent, I think it's absolutely the number one thing you need to think about every single day. It's absolutely the key to ensuring that you are going to have a successful business and you're going to have successful solutions. But if you really just keep it simple and just say, hey, we're just paying you to think. We're not paying you to do anything, right? We're not hiring you for the job that you're coming into. You know, if you are being recruited for the role and the job that we are hiring you for, you're at the wrong place. Because that means that we're very short-sighted about what we think about you as far as your potential. If you are just coming to fill a role, you probably don't want to go to that place.
Yeah, nice. So one thing that Jana brought up, this might be a question for you, Brian.
Sure.
Was the idea of EVs in Southeast Asia.
Sure.
Now, historically, a lot of, let's say, a lot of lubricants development was driven in Europe and the Americas. Obviously, that's where the base of a lot of the OEMs are. And with some of these technology shifts, we're starting to see maybe that sort of base of control start to move. How do you think that impacts the sort of the lubricants climate in Europe?
Yeah, I think it does impact it quite a bit. I think one of the things is that probably over the last 5 to 10 years, one of the most important things has been, as the evolution of EVs have come along, is really just, you know, pacing that out. I mean, I think probably 5 or 10 years ago, you probably could have got way out in front of it, and you probably would have maybe been working with 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 OEMs, and, you know, which ones are going to be there at the end, and understanding the technology that they need. I think, you know, just staying patient and over a period of time and ensuring that you're looking at the right technology that is more broad-based, and that has moved quite a bit, has been really important. I think that it's real easy to jump on whatever you think the trend is for the day, but what is the one that's going to be sustainable for a long period of time from a technology perspective? And slow, patient marathons are a lot better than sprints. And so I think from a technology perspective and the way we've seen it moving, that has been steadily moving from European North America to Asia as far as EV technology has been going. But I still think the marathon viewpoint is much better than sprinting towards something, because I think you probably would have been wrong quite a few times over the last 5 years.
Maybe something to add. So who could imagine 10 years ago that an OEM, automotive manufacturer, is not building an engine on his own, giving it to a third party? So this is completely a change to the old behavior of having own knowledge in engine manufacturing. I think this is one part how we see a big change. The other thing, for sure, electrification will move on. And what we saw, what you said in the past, the model, especially in industrial, was, okay, place a business, get approvals in Europe or Germany, and then go out in the world where other plants making similar applications, and then you're in the business. It's often still the case, but the move is ongoing, and I think there's, if you maybe in 5 or 10 years looking back to the day today, I think there will be at least a mix of it, maybe even more from Asia coming, because there are the EV developments going, and maybe the Germans and French people or OEMs will duplicate, let's say, the approvals they received from Asia. I think this is something which can bringing more complexity in. On the other side, this is a normal, let's say, change of things, and we need to adapt, especially faster than in the past, where it was a really long-term run, even until you get an approval in 3 years and so on. It's now so fast, and if you're not on track or right in time, you're behind. And we as lubricant suppliers need also play our role here.
Yeah, maybe Patrick, if you wouldn't mind expanding too, just from the customer perspective, what do you find in the market they are kind of demanding? Are there some overall trends that you've seen over the last couple of years, whether it's, you know, different green technologies, whether it's providing services, any kind of like smart technologies? What are the kinds of things that your customers are starting to demand that you haven't seen in the past?
I think starting with services, I think we did a great job in services, especially in Europe, the last 10 years. Then it was a bit decreasing. Then the OEMs, or let's say our customers, wanted to make it themselves again. Now then there's a change. Okay, now I also want to service from external. So I think this is also a bit in waves. I cannot say that it's a completely trend which will stay the next 10 years, that service will be an external factor of a lubricant supplier. But for now, I think it's more and more part of the conversation. It's around digital measurement things. So in the past, we sold just a product, a formulation, let's say a technical solver. Now we are selling a solution, as you said before, including service, including digital support. So I think this is definitely something where you need to be part of. Just selling lubricants or producing lubricants or develop lubricants is maybe still an important part, but not the only part. And I think this has changed massively in the last years, that you are more and more a full problem solver instead of a single product supplier.
Yeah. Maybe just to add on, another thing indeed is, which is a great example to show that things it's not just one trend, but things do change. I think a few years back, if we talk about sustainability, I think everybody was on this whole sustainability train, right? And this is the only one we're going to talk about, et cetera, et cetera. And whenever you talked about sustainable solutions, everybody was like, great, let's do it. And now world is changing, economic situation is changing, a lot of cost pressure everywhere. But on the other hand, regulations didn't went onto the sustainability piece as much as we would have thought, maybe wished, whatever. And suddenly that topic is going back into probably second or even third place, right? And again, we are talking more about cost efficient as possible, which unfortunately a lot of sustainable solutions are not the most cost efficient yet. So that's why, but still sustainability is there, right? So it will not go away. Energy transition is not going away, but it's slowing down a lot. So that's again also going to what you said on this sprint. If you put all your money on that sustainability piece, that would have been a bit bad, right? So it's a bit of a long-term thing you have to see, and then you have a bit of up and downs, and just going there.
Yeah, and to be honest, just to sort of wrap it up, because I think what we're all discussing at the end of the day, we need to look at the first principles, like what exactly, so connecting end users with what we are doing. I think if we talk a lot about what, service, sustainability, we're forgetting about why. So what are our end users paying us for? So what are jobs to be done? And who are the customers we're talking about? Because the end users with commercial transportation or private individuals, they're trying to get from A to B as efficiently as possible. We are 3 steps away from that. The workshops are trying to service the vehicle as efficiently as possible. So I think when things change in our industry, we need to reset by thinking what is on the money for different type of customers we serve, and that could change, right? So for instance, talking about the services, I think the problem with services still in our industry, how to monetize them correctly, because sometimes they're value adding, sometimes the clients want them, but they're not willing to pay for them. So I think we need to probably spend more time discussing the very fundamentals of what drives the value in this industry, rather than the growth only expressed in volumetric terms, because then it's a much better guide for the business model and priorities, as opposed to just looking at whether we want to sort of specifications and the regulation, etc. It's just going back to the first principles. What are we there for? And who is prepared to pay for what at which stage? And there's a lot of applications to cover. Yeah.
So I think Petra touched on a little bit, maybe a changing list of priorities, right? And how that order is kind of starting to be restructured. There's some obvious, let's say, clouds that kind of hang over the industry a little bit. So maybe let's talk about a little bit, it's not a sexy topic, but supply chain and how supply chains have to get restructured in the current environment. Brian, I don't know how you see, you've obviously got a pretty global purview.
Sure.
So how do you see that sort of changing, maybe even region by region?
I mean, again, I try to keep things super simple. I think it's real easy again today to say, let's completely change our supply chain. Let's completely take a look at what's happening in the world economically and from a trade perspective, and all of a sudden jump to a new solution. I think generally when everyone's running one way, you probably should run the exact opposite. I've been in a few industries where you're chasing things around the world, you're chasing duties and you're chasing taxes, and at the end of the day, those decisions long term are probably not the right thing. And so, from the perspective of the way I think about it is, our strategy is super simple. We just want to be the last people on earth making additives. That's it. And so if you use that as your principle and your fundamental principle, then you just think about what are the tenets of that long term, and you make your supply chain decisions that way. So from the perspective of are people making a lot of changes? Yeah, you need to adjust along the way. But I think as far as a fundamental change to the way supply chains should think about how they're operating, I think it would be too short term right now to jump on anything material to the long-term viewpoint of what a company wants to do from a supply chain perspective. So I'd be very interested to hear what others think, but I think that's fundamentally where we're at and what I think is probably the best long-term in the marathon.
Yeah. Jana?
Yes, so I think it's a very sound approach. And there's a lot of factors that are currently influencing the discussions in the management tables. And it's very difficult not to confuse short-term cost of doing business factors versus fundamental. A fundamental for our industry is what is going to be made where, by who, because that defines the manufacturing footprint of the customers on the industrial side, defines mobility footprint, which OEMs are going to be dominating the mobility landscape. So I would agree. I think it is very important, like this classic saying, if you have an hour to solve the problem, spend 50 minutes defining the problem and 10 minutes solving. Finding the discipline of sort of not getting into the tactical mode of a longer term decision, I think it's very critical. Because, for instance, we have already seen in the space of the last sort of 9 months of the year, when some of the decisions that seem to be forever, this is a new normal, have been pretty much reversed. Some of the, for instance, growth assumptions we mentioned, countries like India, well, everything is going to happen in India. One decision at the sort of geopolitical level immediately undermines puts at question a couple of GDP points. So be very careful and kind of unpack the issues before you make some longer term commitments. And I say companies that I'm sort of very privileged to sit with here have a lot of discipline of doing so and a lot of experience with scenario planning. I wish for the small and medium-sized company, especially in Europe, to have the same level of kind of conversations at their management table, because it's a complex environment. Of course, you guys have a lot more exposure, but these big and small issues are equally relevant for an SME operating the same environment. But yeah, just triage carefully between short and long-term impact.
Hey, Patrick, maybe let's also try and take an optimistic view, right? So there's got to be some, for the Europeans among the audience who have businesses here, there's also got to be some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, right? And there's some growth drivers as well. So say, for example, and some of it comes out of the clouds, right? So let's say, for example, with the current environment, there's probably opportunities for increased defense spending, infrastructure spending, and there's opportunities for that inside of lubricants business. Where do you see some of the bigger drivers for growth in European lubricants business?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think it's often politically driven. Yeah? So if there's a decision of getting subventions, getting let's say support, it's a trigger to start things, investments, and so on. For sure, defense and infrastructure, which is especially in Germany now with a new political setup, a booster for this kind of area, which is fine. The problem is where you start defense and where defense stops, because in most of the cases, it's the same companies building a truck or something, a defense car, let's say. And therefore, it's a mix, and still automotive is the biggest driver or consumer for lubricants and the supply chain before. And this will not cover fully what is missing, let's say, from the electrification or in the movements to Eastern Europe or outside of Europe. Yeah. So, but I hope for more, let's say, changes, boost. Maybe we have also one day a situation that not politically driven decisions lead to a boost from its own. So I think Europe must start to be innovative again, must start to find new things where we are better at making the change and not be a Me Too continent where then we are behind in time and in technology. So I think it must also come a lot out of ourselves, where maybe the new markets are. So, for example, just to mention one is the data center fluids, which is, I don't know, 10 years ago, I would not have thought that lubricants play a role in this part of or to be a part of this area. But it is a new area which we have not expected before. So let's concentrate on it, and I think many of us are doing. But maybe there must be more that we are competitive from a continental way against America, Asia, and so on. But I think, there's a lot of things going on. Some things are helping already, but there need more to come.
Petra, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I fully agree with what you said. And data center, I think, is one of the very interesting examples, right? Because when we discussed it internally as well a few years back, I brought it as kind of this new growth sectors piece, right? And nobody ever thought about Europe or even Germany will play any kind of role there. And in the global setup, I still believe we don't play a role yet. However, things are starting to move as well, right? So watch out for them, right? So they are also happening here, although we are not the leader. But I think then if you go more on the industrial side, if we talk about the whole electrification, energy transition, etc., I always say, well, the green electrons, they don't just come out of the box, right? So they need to be generated somewhere. And if you think about this whole energy, electricity generation, where you think about turbine oils and transformer oils, etc., there's so much, and this is really a growing piece where we do have very strong OEMs in Europe as well, right? So that's probably a bit the piece where things are happening more than in old-fashioned steel industry now. So it's again about this shift of different sectors, and that's, I always say, that's the beauty of lubricants, right? As you rightly said, we have all the sectors, right? We are not playing just in one and need to live with whatever happens to that sector, but we need that kind of ability to and agility, agility to adapt to this changing market.
Maybe for Brian, just real quick, because that sort of touches on one of the audience questions, and please keep the questions coming in. And just up the back, would you mind getting the questions up on the screen, please? So as the questions come in, I feel like if you have a bingo card, then AI has to be on the bingo card. So let's talk about it now. So Brian, maybe one of the questions was around what is the role of AI and how is it going to sort of play out? We've already talked a little bit about, let's say, data center build out and what that looks like for power generation, but maybe even specifically within Afton, like how are you starting to leverage it in terms of even, I don't know, development, design? How are you using it with your people?
Sure, I think the application specifically for us as Afton, but also for the industry, is about the advancing technology from a lubrication perspective. So if you think about the amount of testing that a lot of people forget about that have to go into the new technology and the changing categories, it's multi-tens of millions of dollars every time a category changes. And, there is decades worth of data that we can use to help predict and use as screeners for new technology. But, as we talk about all of the issues with the growth in the industry going forward, it's all going to be about new technology. That new technology is going to come at an ever-increasing cost. And so the AI being used from a testing perspective and understanding how that can be applicable to drive down the cost of new technology for the end user is going to be critical. Because at the end of the day, the technology train is not going to end. We're going to continue to have to be able to enable new hardware under the hood and new hardware in industrial applications. But the cost in that equation at some point is going to break, where we can't continue to spend tremendous amounts on testing, maybe for things that don't need to be tested as much. And we're going to be able to have to use AI specifically in the development process in order to drive that cost down to be able to bring the right solutions.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I would take Brian's approach and keep it, I think with AI, keeping it simple and pragmatic is the best way of not losing your mind. So I'll sort of give you two use cases, which I think one is very attuned with what we do already, and one is actually quite fun, related to what Petra was talking about, the human side. So for instance, if you think about industrial, especially the service-intensive sector, the whole ability about servicing the piece of equipment based on predictive maintenance and real-time equipment monitoring lends itself very well to continuous improvement, how intelligently you predict the failure patterns and how quickly you react. So the reason why I like this case, because it takes something that we already do well, where the value is proven, and it takes it to the whole new level. So for me, AI applied to things that makes things where the value is proven better, faster, cleverer is great. But the other thing that quite often we sort of underestimate, so with a lot of companies, I'm sure everyone on the stage would agree, there is so much wisdom sitting within people, experiences, even used oil analysis data sets that are currently underutilized because we cannot make implicit explicit. So I would think, considering that we are facing a lot of experienced people exiting the industry, we are facing a sort of paralysis by analysis where we information rich, clarity poor, which is what's happening with everyone else. Can we use these technologies to essentially unlock some of the intelligence and human capital we have inside? Now, that is easier said than done. Technology is there. Can we embed it into our organizations to make it work? That's a whole other question. So I think AI has to be driven from the point of view, this is what needs to be done, and this is how technology is doing it, as opposed to tools back, right? So that's kind of how we see as clients certainly try to look across multiple use cases.
Yeah. AI and used oil analysis. Come talk to me later. All right, so there's a couple of questions which all sort of coalesce around a very similar theme around, so the question that's up the top here, around sustainable lubricants, EALs, kind of biodegradable, and there's additional cost. Now, what's interesting here, so the way that it's phrased in this first question is, how can the lubricants industry make customers willing to pay this additional cost? And there was also another question around how can lubrication companies contribute towards a pull factor regarding environmentally conscious over economic decisions? So similar kind of question, but maybe phrased slightly differently. So this is interesting because it's kind of obviously putting customer first, but we're also trying to influence their prioritization and their decisions. So maybe from the sales side, how do you see our role in kind of shaping almost customer preferences?
I think overall, it's a question of education and giving as much transparency as you can as a supplier. So if you are openly discussing, saying, okay, this is the source of the cost, this is what we exceptionally need to add on the normal price, I think then it's a starting point of a good conversation. The question is, okay, what is competition doing? Who is first goer, or let's say first mover? And then maybe you have a disadvantage. So therefore, it's a really sensitive topic. But I think as opener, you are going into a conversation, as clearer you are there. And on the other side, how bigger the priority of the customer is to move on to the next level of, let's say, sustainability, then you are on the same place. If not, I think you must always drive a bit of a two-way offer. On the one side, you must give the chance of being fully on top on the sustainability agenda, having products, biodegradable, all these, let's say, environmental super things. On the other side, if someone say, okay, I just want to have price, we are struggling, then you need to have also the low price offer, which is maybe not that sustainable. But I think this is the only way to do it, being very open, transparent, and having two offers.
Yeah, I think maybe to add on this, there are a bit of different angles to it as well, right? So first of all, just trying to convince the customer to completely change the whole portfolio to sustainable solutions, probably not the right way, right? But what we realize is that everywhere, kind of, there are these niche starting applications, offers, etc., where indeed you also then find the end customers willing to pay it for whatever reason, being for purpose, being for regulations or whatever, but not trying to kind of educate the whole world in one go, but really starting to find that niche applications where it does make sense. And on the other side, as you rightly said, and I mentioned before, this cost pressure, which is right now with our customers, which brings them a bit in that dilemma of saying, of course, sustainability is important for us, but actually I can't afford it right now. but then it's probably also our duty as lubricant supplier to try to make these low cost or let's say conventional products as sustainable as possible throughout our production process and with other pieces, being the recycled packaging or whatever, right? To try to bring the word into that sustainability even without having the most, the 100% sustainable solution.
I think that's probably a good segue maybe into the third question that's on this list, right? And talking about REACH compliance, because that covers both, the biodegradable as well as the conventional lubricant space. Sure. And maybe Brian, you're probably, heavily involved at the very beginnings of development and obviously REACH compliance with all the components that go into lubricants. So how do you see the impact of REACH?
Yeah, the impact of REACH is obviously has been transitioning here over the last multiple years, and it's making it very difficult. I mean, I think that one of the things you're taking a look at is, again, when we strip it all the way back to simplicity, you're trying to deliver the best technology and solution, and some of the components that are used in those best technologies and solutions are becoming either more cost disadvantaged because of REACH, or they're just going to be simply not be able to be used. And so, again, I think the onus is on us from a technology perspective to understand what the need is in the solution, and then go back and find that through different technology and chemistry. But it is becoming increasingly difficult. And so one of the things that we take a look at going forward from the perspective of starting new technology is, how do we start to look at other places to start to look for chemistry, but also alternate chemistries that will ultimately provide the solution with some of the new biofuels. I mean, I think, or bio lubricants. I think one of the things that, going back to the last conversation, is if you can deliver new technology with those sustainable fluids, that is the ultimate equation. I think that's the way that you're going to get the end customer to be able to understand the value and buy it. And certain ones will be able to buy that. But I think that is the equation in order for us to make it. But with REACH, it is becoming extremely difficult.
Yeah. So maybe, Jana, if I can put a couple of these questions together. So the top question at the moment is about, sort of that global versus regional competition. And if you can see just on the latest question as well, it's all about, sort of protecting supply, maybe localizing production. You guys at Klein have a pretty global purview, right? You get to see, all the way across the industry. It's obviously a bit of a kind of a threading the needle exercise, right? Because Europe tends to have probably a little bit more regulation than some of the other regions. And, how do you then, with those headwinds, then protect also the business while still trying to encourage as much free market competition as possible? So how do you see companies kind of dealing with all of these challenges?
It is this kind of multi-dimensional equation, right? Which is, we as researchers love, I'm sure management hates, because there is, if you ask any question, it depends. So sorry to be, so I think, first of all, especially if you look at the global versus regional, the question is like, what are we solving for? You need to frame this question in a number of ways. So again, if we try to bring it back, Brian, like you, with very fundamentals. So what do tariffs and regulation impact? So at the most fundamental level, especially we have seen this with tariffs, do we believe that the supply chains will shift because something will become structurally advantaged or disadvantaged? So the answer is always in the middle, right? No, and maybe it's a strong statement. No industry will come back into North America if there is a longer term structural disadvantage or lack of structural advantage. So will we see OEMs being suddenly relocating all their plants? All these industries are extremely complex. They operate on much longer arcs. So I think there will be some interesting developments, especially in the more dynamic regions like Asia. We can see an emergence of more domestic value chains, which are starting from scratch. Everything else will be more around optionality. So today you're sourcing from one supplier because it was all about efficiency. Today you might have 2 or 3. So everyone is trying to create options, but creating options is not the same as switching to extreme complexity. So for instance, even with the OEMs, when we debate ICE versus EV, we need to remember that running multiple platforms is an extremely expensive business for OEMs. They want to consolidate. So sooner or later, the decisions are going to be made. So first of all, if I were to break down this question, is about be careful. The geography of manufacturing may change, but not as much as the popular press will make us believe. So look at the fundamentals. The cost of doing business will increase for some companies which are impacted by either tariffs or tax, but there are other considerations. For instance, in the US, the introduction of the bill will create some tax savings for the local manufacturers, which can create an advantage in terms of they are slightly more relieved from financial pressures. And for instance, we're looking at the European suppliers, where in the UK or in Europe, we're constantly living under threat of extra tax pressure being added at the enterprise level. So that has nothing to do with the kind of customers. That has to do with with our own business and cost of doing business. The very last point I would like to make, and I think this point we are quite often under discussing, is how the financials and the economics of the customer industry we serve is changing. So for instance, if you think about mining on the industrial side, if you were serving a lithium mine or a copper mine, even 18 months ago, they will be in the up stage of the cycle. So uptime was everything. Cash was all around. If you look at the lithium prices today, the economics has changed dramatically. So all this regulation may not impact our industry, but look at who you are serving and try to anticipate how their balance sheet, how their cash flow is going to be changing, because the amount of money they have to spend on your services will be defined by what's happening with them. So I think this is how I would look at it. Sit around the table and look at cost of doing business, immediate impact on your material, and the economics of your customers. This is how as client we try to look at it.
Yep. Interesting. So there's also a couple of questions around almost like structural business models, right? And specifically the role of distributors, right? So you can see here on the most recent question, how's the role of distributors evolving? But also question number 2, which is with the rise of these gigantic auto parts distributors, how do we see kind of like distribution changing? Patrick, you're on the sales side. I know you're in industrial, but you do have a background in automotive, right? So, how do you see these kind of shifts impacting our business?
Yeah, we can clearly see. First of all, I think every big or middle-sized lubricants company is somehow needing a partner, which is a distributor in this case, to cover local markets, to have also a bit of more stock flexibility, to be closer to the market, to have a closer let's say, service impact to the final end user. So therefore, also we are from Castrol side working closely with partners. I think the change of the last 10 years especially, is that industrial became more and more focused. Yeah? So in the past, it was typical trading businesses here and there through all Europe or even outside. I think the industrial business was not seen as such important as it is today. So a lot of distributors also focusing from their technical teams, from their sales teams into industrial, and this is a trend I totally see. On the other side, there's also kind of a bit of a change that the partners, or let's say the distributors, are becoming much bigger. There are single distributors who were normally, let's say, in one country, in one region in the country. Now there are distributors which are more or less half of Europe with several brands on it. So this makes the things a bit change, because from the past, a partner was seen really like a brand loyal, common growth ambitions, hands into the market. Now it's becoming a bit more competitive between brands, and I think it's also difficult for the distributor to really have the right focus independently of industrial or automotive, because it can be difficult if you have too much brands in your offer. I think somehow you need a kind of your own branding, and I think this has changed in the last years. Let's see how it goes, but this is definitely what we see in the market.
Yeah, awesome.
I think just to connect the dots and tell you through in no uncertain terms, the power dynamics within the value chain is changing, and that's we see that in different regions. So to your point, Patrick, is the intermediation is a very big force. And the reason why, as lubricant suppliers and additive supplier, we not all need to be thinking about it, because the value pool across the value, it's not just created, it's also redistributed. So as you know, the growth is very limited. It's not just how much growth we create, it's how we share it. So if we look at three trends, which are completely separate for US, Europe, and North America. In North America, we see the rise of these mega distributors that are consolidating extremely fast.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same trend we see with auto parts stores in Europe. It's just a different part of supply chain is consolidating. In Asia, it takes a more interesting form, which is online to offline. So it's the same trend. Our industry is mature and the value is finite. So we need to look at how it is shared and who is winning in this power balances. Everyone should be thinking how their ability and who is really driving that value car, right? The brands that traditionally have felt that making their products available to a partner is the best thing they can do, now finding themselves dependent on the partners who actually deliver the value to the end customer. So out of everything we discussed today, I think this is the point worth reflecting on, because it impacts every region and every part of our value chain.
Okay. The top question at the moment is how can lubricant suppliers play their role in terms of corporate social responsibility in managing the growing impact of climate change? So maybe a question for Petra to sort of expand on this a little bit. I think one of the challenges that we have with our customers, at least, is that, let's say, for example, the numbers that are often quoted is, we might make up, let's say, 3 to 4% of total maintenance spend, but we have an impact on, let's say, 40% of reliability. So when we are such a small component of the overall spend of our customers, but we have such outsized impact, what are the types of things that we can do to get a better seat at the table when we are having these kind of high-level discussions with some of the larger customers?
Yeah, it's really an interesting one. And if I would have the perfect answer, I might be even somewhere else. No, but indeed, I think as lubricants is kind of the key enabler, right, for energy transition. And I think you rightly said it in the beginning, right? It's 90% of the frictions are everywhere, which includes all kind of application and ultimately all kind of efficiency improvement, which helps to for the energy transition and to reduce climate change. How to bring us to the table? I think it's making that visible. It's a lot about education as well, because if you really bring that topic in, yes, we are very small in terms of spend and in most cases also, let's say, volume, just because it's just a tiny little bit, but the impact is so big. My experience is as soon as you bring that to the table, then suddenly it's like, you're right, now as you say it, right? It's so the people or the customers, they do know, but kind of don't really act upon it. But as soon as you make it visible and really bring in that transparency and that direct impact, and not just saying, it's not the addition of this and that and then a bit of lubricants and all together the outcome is that, but actually we can relate it directly to our impact of lubrication solutions, then suddenly the interest is quite high.
Now, Brian, maybe a question on the impact of some of these kind of regulations, so REACH and TCSA. I think it's come up on question 2. Right?
Sure.
So when you guys think about development of new products, your customers are always trying to balance whether we want a single harmonized global formulation or whether we want to be manufacturing for very specific markets. So how are you seeing this kind of all play out? Is there, where are the drivers and where is most of the volume going? Is it for global and sort of simplified product lines, or is there starting to be a bit of a shift towards let's make local products for local markets?
Yeah, I think you've seen a large shift in the last 10 years. It's much more, you're seeing, for instance, made for products for certain region and application. I think that, it really does vary by customer. I think you have seen the shift in, there are certain specifications that have come about over the last 10 years that weren't there 10 years ago. And so you're seeing the niche application in region come more to the forefront. I also do think, though, that you have. So we've talked a lot about the varying degrees of what people want. You see a lot of, I just want this product and I want the lowest cost. And so I think the most important thing is understanding what you're not going to do versus what you're going to do. And I think one of the things from a technology perspective that we have to balance all the time is how do we have this application and is it modular that we can use in different areas of the world for the different applications and different customers. It's a delicate balance. When you're spending already at pharmaceutical rates of R&D in the additive world, it's hard to even think about more return for the technology investments. But I think one of the things is we can continue to do is make modular technology decisions in order to be able to service that wide variety of customer needs.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And maybe one thing also to add is I think we cannot win this play as a single supplier, additive supplier, lubricants producer. I think it's also something where we need really political support, because there are decisions sometimes which are not reflecting lubricants applications. So, and therefore, I think it's important also to play together in associations like the UAL in Europe or in Germany, VSE and Unity and so on. I think the voice together is often helping and should help more to make meaningful decisions. And I think therefore also, we need to play this collaboration a bit more in the sense of everyone. So it's just something to add.
And Petra, just a quick one. When we're talking about EV fluids, immersion cooling fluids, feels like there was a lot of hype around this. It was, kind of 3-ish years ago, and it all kind of died off a little bit and got a bit quiet. Just to resurrect the question, in terms of the EV fluids and immersion cooling liquids in Europe, what do you guys see as the sort of the outlook for that?
There is definitely potential. It might look a little different than we thought, right? So that's, especially if you think about also immersion cooling. It's the question, why is it of interest? Yeah. And for example, if you think about data center, in the US, you have a lot of space. So probably the reason why you think about it is more of a technology perspective. Now, what we see here in Germany and in Europe, that the ability that new kind of cooling technologies help to reduce space, which actually we don't have so much in Europe. That's the use case why it's of interest here. That makes it probably a little different, especially in terms of how you phrase the CVP, how you go, also in terms of who is your customer. So you're talking probably more not to the ones who are building the data center, but more who are operating them and who are trying to manage the real estate around it. But there is definitely the potential for sure.
Yeah, and this is very interesting because exactly like Petra, you're saying, the evolution of this topic. When this conversation started, we as Klein got a lot of questions about how big is the size of the market. Now the question is, to your point, what are we solving for and how we position our molecule at the price point that solves exactly the right problem. So the topic will stay around, but what it means will change for sure. So different questions now. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time that we have for this session. Really thank you for audience participation in adding some really, really good questions. So really appreciate your time. Obviously, here in the theatre, coming up after this is another leadership panel, which is all about driving innovation in the lubricant sector. So that'll be definitely one to stick around for. And if you could please put your hands together for our esteemed panel who did a fantastic job in answering all those questions.
Let me start first with the security and safety. So I need to remind you that in case of emergency, you need to follow the instruction provided and exit the building calmly using the nearest available exit. So in case you see, we hear an emergency signal, please follow the instruction that they will be given. Put your phones on silent mode. That would be very helpful for us. Flash photography is not permitted. You can photograph, but please no flash. We were going to have a Q&A section at the end. We are going to use Slido for that. So please use that tool that has been provided by the organization to submit your questions. So now let me introduce the speakers. Myself, it's Mattia Dani. I'm an In fact, as an entrepreneur, I have my own company, but I'm here in the capacity as president of UIL, which is the European organization of the lubricant industry. So I'm the one trying to represent you, towards our institutions, and also try to keep our community connected. Together with us, we have Merle Reimers, who is Group Lead Lubricating Film and Boundary Layer at Aachen University. She is a Master of Science, studied Mechanical Engineering at Aachen University. She's a research scientist at Institute for Machine Elements and System Engineering. She is the group leader of lubricating films and boundary layers at the tribology division there. She's going to explain us what they're doing and what's the role of that institution in our industry. Then we have Laura Batje from LATAT. She's the principal researcher in lubricants in the Industrial Fluids Research and Development Unit at LATAT. She focused on leading R&D projects in the field of advanced materials and sustainable industrial processes within the lubricating sectors. So another example of what the research institutes are doing within our industry. Then Dr. Li Wenwei, who is president and CTO at Novitas Chem Solutions. So a representative, if you want, of the industry, the innovative part of the industry. He holds a master's degree from Columbia University and a PhD in inorganic chemistry from MIT. She has been working in the industry for more than 40 years. We are grateful that he's going to share some of his experience. And last but not last, we have Perry Peters, who is CEO of Matrix Specialty Lubricants. He began a career in lubricant in 1986 after graduating as a marine engineer. Now he serves as co-chairman of Food Grade Lubricants Working Group of ELGI. So he's part of our community. He's known as a pioneer, passionate about developing new opportunity, markets, and products. So thank you very much for being here. So we have a panel, if you want, on innovation and what's the role. So normally as a president, I tell what's the role of our industry and how innovative this is. The reality is that we are perceived as, let's say, an old industry where nothing happens. The truth is that we are not old, we are more than old. We are an antique industry. The use of lubricants is credited in the Saqqara pyramid. When the first manufacturing machine was built, the Mesopotamian potter wheel, a lubricant was there. It was popping out of the ground, because try to have two rocks turn on top of each other. As long as our civilization is going to build on machinery, on movement, we are going to be there. We have been participating to the change of our civilization. We are still innovating a lot. So the key for survival is change. And in a sense, we are going to see we are perceived as prudent, sometimes conservative, but in fact, we are not. We are ever changing, and we need to do that. So let's try to cover this with our speakers. So the first question is, from my point of view, is what is driving innovation? It's market forces or regulation. Let's say until 50 years ago, institutions weren't acting really in our industry. We are free to serve, let's say, performance or customer needs. But in the last 50 years, especially in Europe, I will say, a new actor is driving what we have to do. There is debate whether this is for good or for bad, whether this is crowding out, let's say, other sort of innovation or not. So, Merle, what do you think about what is driving innovation?
So I actually would say, hello everyone, first of all. I would say it's actually both. Like for one side, for sure, regulations are actually driving our innovation. We are focusing on getting better in that direction. But I would also say, especially from a perspective of university, we are seeing actually that also getting better in the in wear preventing or even friction preventing. We actually want to understand what's happening. So we are still going on this fundamental research part where we want to actually getting better in this direction. So I would say from my perspective, from the university side, we actually see both. And if we go into the regulation side, I also see actually that on the one hand, yes, we kind of have to follow this. We have to develop in a certain direction, but also we can get positive effects out of it to actually get better in the direction we want to.
Thank you. Li Wen, what do you think? In your 40 years, have you seen what has been driving innovation, no? From your customer point of view, no?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. A very kind introduction. In fact, that I'm right in the innovations. So I absolutely share the complexity, as you said, from the lubrication. It has to do it right in terms of the performance. And then when you combine with the regulatory, say bio, green, we know the lithium hydroxide excess cannot be used, right? We know some PFAS, all those things combine. But then when you have the solution, and then when that combine, I think that will drive and bring the innovation to the reality. Make sense? I think of course, innovation has a lot to do with what we call the status quo. When we actually are making the grease for decades, my personal experience is that, of course, you come out with another way making grease through the micronized powders, and obviously the question is that all those benefits you have to be able to bring into the reality and facing the status quo, which will slow down the innovation. Make sense? Yes.
So basically, you both seem to agree that both things are important, no? Which is clearly we need to look at both, no? What our consumer are demanding and what our institution are demanding, no? And this is a need now, no? That we need to follow. But what are the actors of innovation? No? Here we are representative from the Research Institute and other, no, from the market. Perry, what, in your experience, no, what's driving, but more than that, who's making the innovation?
I think you have to go back initially to where innovation should come from, and I think a lot of companies having an R&D development, sort of developing products or innovating products was initially the drive. And you mentioned regulation just a minute ago. I think regulation is an opportunity to sort of reverse innovation, where regulation very often is seen as a burden. It's singing around the sound, no? Or, yeah.
Can you hear us? Or
yeah. Okay. Where it's seen as a burden initially, you can actually convert it into an opportunity. Regulation is not something which should be seen as something which needs to be done, but you can use that as an opportunity to completely reverse your development of products and look in it from a more market-driven point of view rather than an R&D point of view. So from internal innovation to external innovation. And I think at least that's how we see it nowadays. And I wish a lot more companies would do the same. So in order to get more connection to the market, rather than doing the innovation yourself and at the end find out that maybe this wasn't something people were looking for.
so thank you. So I think my point is also understanding where innovation happens. No,
Absolutely, yeah.
I own a small company, like many of our colleagues. Some work in big international corporations. So the question is, should I work inside me with my people? Should I work, building partnerships with university? So why people should come, at you and work with you? Merle, what do you think about?
I think, especially as you were already saying, university is bringing people together. Especially if I'm just talking about myself, I'm a mechanical engineer, so I basically don't have that big clue about chemists. So let's come together, put those knowledge together in such research, going in already also into the application, what is at the end the innovation we want to drive. And this is basically where we are come together. We bring people together in one project going actually to drive this kind of innovation. And this also applies for competitors. Like we have projects together where more than just one lubricant manufacturer is working together on a specific direction where we want to go in the future. And and also I think in general as university, if I'm going for me as a mechanical engineering, talking a lot about rolling bearings, sliding bearings, where we already have the application. This is where we also come into play, bring our knowledge into what is actually the need at the end for the market, and also go a little bit more onto the bigger application, for example, wind industry, where we apply our rolling bearing again. So basically, the whole chain starting from lubricant to the manufacturer at the end to our application. And this is basically our role where we can basically build the bridge between the innovation that should happen and actually the innovation that is needed.
But in your, if you can, no, what type of, when you do project, no, without disclosing any, let's say, proprietary information, what type of projects, no, you're working on, just to give an idea, no, what's brewing, you know, if you want, to our audience, and whether it's SMEs or large corporation or both. So how does it work? No, what you're working?
At the end, I have to say both again. So if we go into like very big projects, I will probably take out one which is focusing on wind industry. We have this electrical current running through our drivetrain, which actually affects not only our bearing from a mechanical side, but also affects the lubricant, where we are actually focused on together, where we have big lubricant manufacturers working together, but also wind turbine OEMs, also gear manufacturers, or and rolling bearing manufacturers. So basically all the big players at the end. But also we are having those projects where we are talking more about like smaller projects where it's very important that SME collaboration is working with us together in such public funded projects, where we are not only having just one, but also two or three, also again from different sides, which we are bringing together to drive this innovation. And the good point there is also, especially for SME and especially in Germany, I have to say, they're also getting funded here and there. So basically, if they help in this project, they're getting here and there at least 50% actually funded. So.
And Laura, what's in what are you working on, and with big companies or small companies?
Thank you, and hello everyone. Thank you, Mattia, for presenting me. So we are an RTO, Research and Technological Organization based in Spain, and our mission, we believe we are a key and a strategic partner for industry, and our mission is to help companies to anticipate their future needs and also to turn ideas into real market solutions. So, for example, we have here our colleagues from N0. With them, we developed a novel eco-lubricant for the bike sector that gives both a responsive solution for requirements and also sustainable needs. I would say also that RTOs like that and universities, we also act as a bridge between companies and different sectors. So we try to involve different key players in the whole value chain of lubricants, so from additive suppliers to formulators to end users, all connected, driving towards some developments together. So I would say that with the knowledge from technological organizations and combine it with the expertise of the industry, who are the ones that really know the market needs and the customer needs, we do become a strategic partnerships together. So so that's mainly what we do in RTO. So connecting sectors and key players in the industry of lubricants.
So they seem to be, let's say, working on performance, no, bearings, but for, let's say, for growing industry like the wind, no.
Exactly.
In your case, you're working on the same issues, or
and like that, we deliver these tailored R&D services, mainly focus on formulating novel lubricants for different applications. Or now the industry is moving towards EV vehicles, energy efficient costs, and reduction of cost, and improve this competitiveness of our companies. So it's our main vision. So
It's still performance. So this is one of the idea when I tend to represent you during the ESPR, the eco design, no? Eco design rules, where the idea of the eco design is tell us how we should formulate to improve, let's say, the eco friendliness. Normally tell them that we have been in the business of saving energy since the beginning. No, this is in fact what we do. No, in a sense, you don't need to tell us. No, because we are doing it on our own. Liwen, so what are the benefits? Have you ever partnered with university? So you have a university background, no? You're a PhD.
Yes, academic
so,
background.
but after that, after you got out of the university, no?
Sure.
Did you ever work on partnerships? Why company should do it? Does it make sense? And what's the return on investment, especially? No?
Yes, in fact, that partnership is so important. That's how you connect with the different segments from academic, from even doing the testings, even with the HPM. Is that the testing are proper? And say if you do the wind turbine, do you need a low wear index? Those are those questions. But then you want to get close to the application. Then you want to get OEM involved. And they have to say, yeah, this worth trying. And then next step, investing in trial. Of course, the people actually in the market see the visions that not just the green, but also the green product that actually perform in the open gears, in the other bio applications, and those I think that's the key word. What I think connecting the different segments from academic to OEM to the end use, and that together, that innovation has a better chance to succeed, and that will reduce the development time and avoid the duplicates. I can tell you how many times I've been going around the circles to verify internally to make sure it is correct. But then you have to take this to the market, to the partners, and to realize that innovation and to solve the very complex performance challenges and to meet with the regulatory requirements. That's what I see. Yes, very important.
And on what if you can say, what are the themes that your company is working on?
We, lubricant, lube and also the grease. And I'm working on the grease area. Grease is for the bearing, obviously. What's really different from the right is the thickeners to thicken, protect the barrel under the load. And that's what I'm looking on. It's a micronized powder for the grease manufacturing.
So still on performance you want?
I think so. Because for decades, in fact, the most grease manufacturing is done through the in situ. You had to cook more than 200 degrees C, very high the temperature, and drive the waters away when water only boils at 100 degrees C. But you had to heat that high, and then you cool it down to make the grease. But now you can do it, just like you use the cornstarch to make the noodle, using the cornstarch powders, right? Then you add oil and you make the grease. And in fact, we have proven this grease is made actually better. We have shown the evidence. But to get people involved and seeing, wow, that is a good way, it's quicker. You don't have to produce the in situ batches. You can produce 1 kilo powders, you make a 10 kilo grease. You can easily replicate this. And so accelerate the developments for the new applications. That's like what I said in the beginning. This innovation platform is so interesting, bring everybody's attention. And of course, I think from Novita's perspective, is an innovation and a preform. We call it preforms micronized powder.
I'm amazed. So as said, we've been in business for almost 5,000 years, but we are still working, on how to improve our products. And probably we can do it for another 5,000, Perry, what you're working on?
It's actually interesting that you mentioned that we've been in business for 5,000 years. And I think for that period, lubricants have been used in applications, and people are used to shortcomings, and people are using products because they have been using them for decades, not because they're the best in that application. And very often the application have been developed. And the interesting part as a company, you need to be aware of the fact that people are not considering that they are using the wrong product. They're considering they're using the right product. So for us, innovation is one thing, is developing new products, but then going to the market and explaining to them that it can be done in a different way without, I would almost say, insulting them that they have been doing it the wrong way for decades, which is not true. Very often they weren't aware of new chemistry or new developments or innovation. And going back to, for example, like when you need environmental, more sensitive products or better products, or you go food grade, there you have the opportunity to go back to your drawing board and ask the customer or ask the potential customer a number of questions. It's like, okay, we have an opportunity to develop something new. I know you would like to go biodegradable, or I know you would like to go less toxic, but what else can we do in terms of improving and innovate in that specific application? And I think there, in a lot of cases, and this is, of course, this is what we do as a company, but I think in a lot of cases, the cooperation and the communication is lacking amongst the different organizations. And whether this is end users, whether this is universities or RTOs or lubricant producers. This morning I heard something like, okay, the world has changed and we need to collaborate and we need to network. And I think that's absolutely true. And rather than sort of considering we're all competitors, there should be a lot more sharing in terms of the information. Because at the end of the day, we all want a better world. We all want our products to be innovative and contribute to a better world, less energy consumption, lower carbon footprint, more biodegradability, less toxicity. So this is what we are trying to do as a company continuously.
I think you raised an important point. So what does it take to innovate? No, because in a sense we are long term. We tend to be a little bit conservative sometimes. Yeah. Again, that's a long story, no? We are in the long-term process, so we move slowly sometimes. We move constantly, but slowing. So what does it take to convince people, to innovate? What commitment do they need? How much money, for it to be successful, What's the recipe of, from your point of view, of successful innovation when people partner with university?
Yes.
How much do they have to commit for real to get any sensible result?
Yeah. I think we have basically, again, two answers for that. Like, if you're going a little bit more on the long-term ship, it probably makes sense actually to go in a public funded project where also, especially SME, but also big companies are getting funded to do such projects. But therefore, for sure, it's important to actually work together. Like, it's a public funded project, so it's like those results are at the end. Public, everybody wants to share those knowledge. And if it's also usually some such projects are at like 3 or 4 years long, and even if it's kind of heading in the right direction, we can actually extend going a little bit further and deeper based on the results on the first period. But if we want to actually have something smaller directly just within a smaller consortium, it's also possible to do this just with us, university, and maybe 2 or 3 selected member to actually go into a smaller research project, which then obviously is not public funded, but there's also the opportunity to go into this direction.
But money-wise, more or less, what's the size of...
So basically you can go into millions of projects, but also especially for SME, which obviously don't have that kind of money, you can probably just go quite less, talking about 1,000 or 10,000, to just jump into such a public funded project, to be part of it and actually drive where this project should go.
Laura,
I was thinking that I think it's not just about the investment, it's about like the mindset of the company. So we have experience working with the small companies that they have low investment capabilities in R&D, but they do go for that, and we have delivered products on the market just because they bring in the DNA like innovative mind. So I would say that, and also I do see here like RTOs play a key and a strategic role on delivering benefits and a strong return on investment. So I would say that it's not simply outsourcing R&D to someone else. It's like making these alliances to collaborate together and to deliver value and accelerate innovation. So in LATAT, we've seen this many times. So we have helped companies launching products in the market and also opening entire business units. And in some cases, they have also expanded to new markets that they have never considered before. So I think this combination between industries and RTOs, it's what innovation needs. And those companies that think that innovation gives only short-term gains, it's a mistake. So innovation is becoming essential, and those who innovate and think like long-term gains will make really a successful company.
So, like Merle, you think so innovation is not short term, no? So if you want to do it, you need to engage.
Right.
It's at least in a medium term project, no?
Exactly.
3 to 4 years, maybe even more.
Yeah.
And money wise, same experience. So from millions to tens of thousands, or
Depends
larger?
on the capabilities of each company. As Merle said, we've worked with some small companies with low amount of investment, but they clear understood what the customer need, and they have it on their minds. Okay, we need to develop a specific grease for this application, following the sustainable demands that European Commission and circular economic targets are focusing. So they came to us, and we helped on formulating that new product to the market.
So I would say maybe the money is not the problem. So you have different sizes,
Exactly.
but you don't have different sizes for time, no? So if you start, you need to engage, let's say, for at least 3 to 4 years, let's say, be prepared to failure, no? Like for everything in innovation.
Well, I hope I
What
won't.
do you think? What do you do to convince people to change, no?
I hope I won't take too much time, but money is such an important issue. As you know, if you are in a company, many actually company successful coming from an innovation become the big companies. But when you are in a company trying to do innovation, you're working on the budget. You are given the subjects. But when you are working on innovation, that you know something click in your mind, you start working on it. Your money, you need it. Reality is that it's by phases. It goes through the accelerations. That's where the money you got from your family, from your friend, or somebody is stupid. They give you the money, right? So you lose a lot of money over a period of time. But when you are successful and I want to grow the company, then what will really help? It helps us through the US SBA. So we are able to get a location. And in the US, we started manufacturing. But that's not enough, because you want to grow your capacities. The best way at that stage, when you are not really established, when you still have a lot of rejections, the best way is to get the money from the partners. And of course, we want to get it from a venture capitalist, right? They want to invest. But all those investment to motivate the innovation, they want a return. The bigger the size, the more return. And then you lose your flavor or the focus on the innovations. So it depends on the stages. Make sense? So I think that, but if we are able to work through with the partners and drive the innovation, more likely an innovation will stand. There's no guarantee in innovation. The partnership is so critical. That's in my perspective. And to bring the money in, to bring the right people in, to connect with all different segments, and then we can be truly successful walking through the challenges stages.
I have to say that as the owner of the company, I like innovation. I also like the return on investment. No, so this was make me continue the innovation. No, it's a big incentive. But what do you think are now, if any one of us should engage in innovation, what's the minimum requirement, no, to be successful? Time. So in your experience, no, a successful project should take at least X time and engage X money? Do you have
Some-
if you want, no? If
Some within our control, some is sometimes is the timing. For instance, a grease plant running, they caught fire. They realize temperature is too high, totally out of our control. But what's within our control is build a cohesive team, internal and with the cohesive partners, and together to drive this connected to solve the complex and in fact also a reality we have to face also is on the regulatory. Some regulatory helps. You want something green, but not necessarily, because if you deal with the food grade, for instance, they go by regulatory, they want the HS1, for instance, and HS1 is a list that come from decades ago.
no,
But-
I think from my point of view, what's at least especially what's happening in Europe. Now, that sometimes dreams are always good, no, good dreams, but the reality is stronger, no. So we always have to balance, no, our ambition to change
Yes.
with the reality to change, no.
Yes,
And we need to help our industry to push change it, but without engaging in, let's say, wishful thinking, no.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
so
there-
what we are spirit with that? Because just to go out and tell you should innovate, yes, but
I would like
what
to,
does it take to do it? No.
I would like to add one thing to innovation, and we were talking about budgets, which is important, but I think there is a word speed which comes to my mind, which became very important and very relevant. I mean, the world is changing super rapidly nowadays, where sustainability a couple of years ago was super important. I'm not saying it's less important, but it's lower on the agenda of a lot of companies. So if you sort of you initiate innovative activities on sustainability, then if it takes too long, if the speed is too slow of the project, you might actually run out of the market which is out there. And then you wasted money to some extent. I mean, the end might not be wasted, but you might have to kill the project because of other priorities. So I think speed is super important. And if I look at myself, I used to work for major oil companies where, unfortunately, with all respect, speed is not something they normally have. I mean, they start up very fantastic projects and it takes quite a long time before they materialize. And being a relatively smaller player, we have the need and the drive to be successful financially. So therefore, speed in our organization, super important. And also reference yourself, like what's going on in the market, and in time decide to cut or to move somewhere else.
Yeah, I would add here that, in my opinion, I would say that speed of execution, it's the key ingredient also. So innovation, if it arrives too late, we are dead. So we have to be fast and agile and to respond the market needs as quick as we can as innovators. So to bring the ideas to lab scale, but then go fast to prototype and market final product. So that's, if this is done within 1 year, that would be great. So, but we have to be in contact with the market needs and just from ideas to this final product, I would say.
Yeah, no, I think that's the balance. That's the balance. No, it's we are long-term industry with conservative tendency. No, but we need to innovate, and then to innovate it means to engage time, mostly time. No, because that's the problem more than money. I would say. No,
Exactly.
time and having the right idea. The right idea. It's all about innovation. You'll never know. No, and you be prepared for that. No, but
A good
that's the way it is.
reference on time, we say is a patent, right? Patent has how many years? But often we know some of the innovations come to the marketplace is after the patent expired, right? So that take a long time. And of course, and today you file the patent, and what you want to do, and try to as you said, within a year or two, that's really drive this, make this discussion helpful. People realize if it is genuine innovations, can we do it faster? Because when you are in a situation, the patent expire and your innovation has many patents elsewhere also generated, and you are now benefit from it.
I will move to the audience. Now we have a question from Lisa Herman. Where's Lisa? Oh, hi, Lisa. Thank you for your question. So how can you avoid idea killing in early stages of research in a corporate environment? Often new developments are driven by short-term market demands and prospective sales numbers, but R&D should also be a vision of the future. No? So how do we avoid idea killing if you cannot make I would say a strong case of the return on investment? So, Perry,
I have I would almost say try to introduce a squad team in a corporate environment, like a rapid intervention team. Of course, I mean you need a group which works on it the long term, but then you have sort of a squad team which is looking at the developments and interfere when you see it's getting derailed, when the innovation is getting derailed. And of course, you need to adjust the power of that squad team so it cannot interfere or stop the project without proper arguments. But I think to have sort of a squad team in a corporate environment, checking what's going on in terms of all the developments on a regular basis, would be a solution there. But at the same time, I also realize it's complicated.
Maybe I would add here, Lisa, we as RTOs, so we are here to help and to connect and to accelerate innovation together with industry. So I would say that just to come to us and explain your challenges. Of course, we will trust with confidentiality, but we will accelerate this knowledge transfer to you and to work together. I think we can deploy in a short period of time, not losing this idea killing in big companies, and to deploy really quick and faster solutions to the market. So, yeah, I hope this can help to your question.
So basically you're saying, because I mean, this idea killing it is, first of all, where the idea comes from, no? If from a, let's say, big company, you have to convince somebody in your company. And maybe you can help with that, no?
Exactly.
Because you can provide,
I think
you can comfort, let's say, the company.
So we are faster to develop these ideas into real solutions and how to prototype the solution, and also thinking in a market perspective to bring this product to a market as fast as it's possible.
So I don't know whether your question is how do you convince internally, no? So yeah, probably, no, you need external verification, no? And maybe support from external source that's validating the, no? Could be helpful. I would say, no, that you need to make a case, also economic case, no? Which is about risk and what do you do when you need to convince people to adapt an idea, no, and not to kill it right away?
In fact, that the squad team, and that means the focus team, is so important. And squad team to bring this so the management and also your customer can understand. And one thing I would like to, I think it's actually important for the R&D, is what I call the flow. The flow, sometimes coming from the idea, and you want the idea to flow, but idea has so many directions. So in the R&D, that what I find the focus is only make one change at a time, and then you continue and eventually come up with a genuine innovation. That seems to be on so many distractions, and with that flow helps.
No, I think interesting that in both cases you all mentioned that the SWAT team, the team.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's innovation is consensus building. So you need not to be alone, no,
Yeah.
and to convince other, no, that that's a good idea, no, that's the probably approach it as no, consensus building, and probably once you have a small group of believers, sometimes it's enough to drive change. So let's say the SWAT team, no, a small group of believers, motivated, no, can change a world. In fact.
Yeah, but it's believers, but it's also controllers at the same time.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
You know, it's like because the believers can carry on, maybe too long, but then you have the controllers jump in and say, "Hey, this is going wrong because something else happened there, and you know you need to either adjust or stop it."
As many things, it boils down to people and money. No, at the end of the day. at the end of the day, you need to have the right people, no, that believe, that are driven, and and support them, no, with money, and hopefully get some money in return. No? So we have another question from the audience, an easy one, I would say. What do you see as the most important innovation trend in lubricants in the next 5 to 10 years? So what is going to change our industry, do you think? If any?
Yeah, I can start speaking more from the university side again, like especially like the application. We are trending right now, especially into those alternative mobility parts like e-fuels and as well as electrical vehicles, which end up in electrical currents, for example, or if we're talking about e-fuels, it's like contamination of our lubricants with such e-fuels like methanol, or even if we're talking about hydrogen, which is coming up here and there more and more. So that's what we are especially also focusing on if we talk about this one.
So do you see any killing application coming up, or is just change, let's say, not at the margin, but continuous improvement? Is more continuous improvement or new application? What do you think, Laura?
I would say that for those who risk is open new applications, but for most of the companies, the idea maybe following European regulations would be to change to sustainable basis, some vegetable basis, but also to think the problems that the current market products are facing. So looking into real applications and how to change, how if we change the basis into sustainable basis, how this can react on final application performance. So
what I like to say is what I call the endurance. Obviously, for lubricant and the grease is to lubricate the surface. And you can either put a surface on coating, right? Or you can put a tribochemical film, right? And how about the thickener that's more adhesive to the surface? I think, I don't know if there's one technology I think would be the next one, but altogether, I think for lubricant, it should be performance driven, provide the substantial benefits such as energy savings, green, come with it, but performance endurance always the first. But then what is it? That's where I think we all have different ideas. But I think this concept generated, especially in Europe, also starting in Europe, right? All those things coming out into part of this development. But then how do we come out with the innovation that truly will stand, everybody see the benefit, performance plus green, right?
What do you think?
Yeah, it's like, I don't think there is going to be a major innovation. It's like we're not going to come up with something, very exotic chemistry, which will change the world. But I think it is much more implementing existing chemistry in the right applications to innovate at a customer level so that they experience. And sometimes I make the comparison lubricants with LED lighting, like when the first LEDs were changed, everybody was against this and it was white and it was, and it was expensive. And nowadays you see LED lighting being very warm in color, actually warmer than the normal light, much cheaper, last longer. And I think this is also the innovation we as an organization or as an industry should consider, is that we have so many products already developed and so many chemistry already developed, which brings innovation if brought to the market. And I think that's where our real innovation is. How do we bring what we already developed to the market?
If I can tell my point of view, I mean, our industry has always been engaging in what we call continuous innovation. There's a lot, no? And this continuous, we've also had big changes, no? Starting from the very beginning, calcium soaps were found in the Egyptian chariot, no? And they don't appear naturally, no? So it means that some Egyptian chemists, in fact, developed that, and with that technology, they built their chariot that they conquered, no? Their world, if you want. The same at Vikings, they developed marine lubricants that could withstand salt water and with that they coated the ships, and again, they conquered the world because they were so flexible that would withstand hard seas. Then we had clearly oil, standard oil, because until 1850, lubricants were made, they were all biodegradable, because they were based, vegetable based, fat, and then oil was discovered, and as you may know, lubricants, mineral oil lubricants were, there was a guy in Standard Oil, which is now ExxonMobil, that tried to distill kerosene, and he found out that what was left over as a news, and this changed our industry, substantially, I think for good, in the sense that performance improved a lot. Then I would say solvent extraction, hydrocracking, that allow for group 2, group 3 increase in quality. So we've had, let's say, great innovations, but as is always the case with them, we don't see them. They happen, and you can't really plan for them. They simply happen. What you can plan is continuous innovation, I would say, and not only plan, you should do it. Otherwise, in the long term, your very survival will be, at stake. We have another question on what is the impact of supply chain and logistics with innovation? So, I mean, that's also important in Europe with all the debate about electrification. We would like to change, but then we find out with the problem. Okay, do I have the stuff? Can I get the materials? Where do I get the materials? What are the constraints? What about the practicality? When in your innovation process, do these themes come around or no? You think, okay, I need to build the best product, and then all the rest will, let's say, we'll sort it out somehow, Which is what we talk, and I would say until 5 years ago, until we found out that not everything could sort out because we couldn't find materials, for some time. So does this, okay, supply and demand and availability of raw materials is a factor in innovation or not?
I think today, in fact, that the supply chain logistic, as we are experiencing a carbon footprint, you had to go from the beginning all the way to the end. Logistic, of course, that's also part of the carbon footprint, right? Transport the fuel. And for the grease, say if you take a polyurea, MDI is a raw material, but is a MDI bio-based to be truly the zero carbon footprint? And if you ask a supplier, they will say, yes, I think so. It can be made, but you have to pay 3 or 4 or 5 times higher the price. So ideally, of course, the entire supply chain, the total cost is the key. And so where do we place what matters the most? I think I emphasize the performance. And performance generally, yes, all the raw material, everything are important, logistics important. But if you can do something truly perform, and they give you the fuel economies, and they generally benefit, improve the lubrication, the genuine what we need, and we are here. We need a better lubricant, better grease. If that is the case, that may outweigh the rest of it. But two, I think we are, and I think more or less they answer the question on the carbon footprint. So where you are, right? You're the upstream, midstream, or downstream. So it's a complex issue.
No, it's very complex. I would say just to mention a, let's say, piece of law that the deforestation. On one hand, they ask us to develop product, the bioeconomy strategy, European. On one hand, they want us to develop bio products, but then they want us to use biomasses, because biomasses they go into, So, again, I think the question goes, if I do that, where I end up in something that is feasible or not, Because, again, it's one of the questions you have now to cover, when you want to pitch. We go back to not idea killing, But my point, I think it's important my question was, do you really factor in now, or again, we are already, no, I need a good idea and then we'll work on that later?
We do in some projects, but to be honest, not in all. It depends actually on the way in which kind of innovation are we already. Are we basically at the start where we are just trying to actually go into a better way, or are we already going more at the end into the application? Are we already ready to tackle this challenge as well? And then we are counting that one in, yes.
Yeah, no, I think that we go. I mean, we have few minutes though, but I think it's connected. Is European innovation capability, technology, peoples ready to tackle the EU Green Deal challenge? So I think our industry is an important tool for the Green Deal because, again, we are in the business. We have been in the business of energy savings since the beginning. No, that's what we do. No, I think we should do more. No, because in the end, even a small performance change in a lubricant could have a big impact in the energy consumption. No, so we are extremely we are a tool. We need to tell them and convince them because not always they realize that's what's our role.
Yeah, I would say
Perry,
that.
what do you think? So do as an European, do you think we can do it? We can make it, or no?
It's a very, very tricky question.
It's a tricky question.
And I think, yes, Europe could, but I think at the same time there are so many external influences which are continuously changing, and like if you sort of innovate, it needs time, like we said, and we want speed, but at the same time, sort of the innovation is continuously attacked from legislation changes, from shortage, and there we go to the previous question. So I think it's very complicated to answer that question. I think if you ask me now, yes, we are. But are we going to be along the line? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would say that yes, we are ready to deal with green priorities from the European Commission. We just have to change the mind. So studying energy efficiency, so studying maybe involving some raw material coming from residues to formulate new products. But I think we are ready to deal with this carbon neutrality within these next years. And I think we can make it in the lubricant sector.
Sure. I think the important point here is, again, the people, as Perry was putting it at the beginning, finding the perfect squad team, like actually to tackle this one, to do this together.
And also that squad team should be continuously aware of the changes. I mean,
Yes.
if you look at distribution, we're all talking about EVs. And the implementation of EVs is happening, but where's the shortcoming? Very often, the distribution of the electricity to charge those EVs. You could have seen that coming 10 years ago, but did especially governments really act on that development? I don't think so, at least. I'm from the Netherlands, and this is one of the biggest issues nowadays, where we don't have proper electricity being provided to either companies or charging EVs. And I think this is not the only country having that issue. And I think you could sort of basically copy that to our industry. Like if we are able to bring some major developments, what are we going to see? What hurdles are we going to see along the line? And if we don't see them coming, you will have similar issues.
Yeah, and maybe I can close because now time is over. I think, yes, we can make it because we have the people, the technology, the capability. As Europe, we can make it. We should not, like for innovation, we should be aware, not engaging in wishful thinking, no? And sometimes we have engaged in that, no? That's my point of view. There are few things that we should look after, I think, for our industry. The deforestation directive, that could influence, whether we can, how the bioeconomy, how the biolubricants, they're gonna look like. The decision next year on the automotive sector, what they call the technology neutrality, how they're gonna interpret that, It's gonna be okay. The internal combustion engine is back, as long as some hybrid form or with the biofuels. And what biofuels? Because biolubricants are connected to biofuel, like fuel is connected to lubricants. and against whether we can convince them in the, let's say, eco-design process that in fact lubricants are tools to save energy, and we should not constrain their use but promote their use, and probably even be willing to pay a little bit of not total biodegradability for lubricant if it increases performance, but much higher. So I think that these are the themes, but I have no doubt we can make it, as long as we keep not so practical and prudent as our industry has always been in the past. So I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. I hope this has been interesting for the audience, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.